Theo was a weak swordsman who couldn't even save his hometown from being destroyed in a vicious war. However, everything changes when he meets a hot mage who trains him to be a powerful warlord and save his people by clapping everyone. The story begins on the war-torn continent of Atlantan, where two rival factions attempt to end their long conflict through a wedding between their heirs. As the ceremony begins, a mage named Siluka senses a dark magic growing and tries to intervene, but Noon takes her seriously. All of a sudden, the demon lord appears, so the two archdukes combine their magic crests to fight. Unfortunately, they lose their heads, and as a result of their deaths, the wedding crashes alongside the last hope for peace on the continent. A few months after that, Siluka sets off on a journey with a guy named Orphan to meet her new master Nartuk. On the way, some soldiers stop her chariot and refuse to let her pass unless she gives them a sloppy. Siluka gets ready to fight them, but that's when Theo arrives and tries to stop the soldiers. At first, he tries to talk some sense into them, but as the soldiers prove they're about as smart as goats, Theo fights them using his sword and magic crest. Although he takes some damage since he's outnumbered, he puts up a good show that makes Siluka grow interested in his big black sword and magic crest. So after he's done fighting, Siluka asks how he got his crest. So he explains he earned it from the numerous monsters he's slain. Siluka then asks what he intends to do with his crest. So he reveals that his hometown has been ravaged by demons and terrorized by a wicked leader, and he intends to return one day and save his people. Although Siluka is impressed with his resolver, she bluntly tells him he fights like Jake Paul without steroids, but offers to help him get stronger. Then, without a warning, Siluka summons an overpowered monster, hinting that he'll become stronger once he defeats and absorbs its core. Seeing the monster, Theo regrets why he chose to save a hot mage in distress, and almost soils his pants when it's time to fight. Unfortunately, as the battle begins, he gets overwhelmed by the beast's raw power. However, after he survives getting tossed around like trash, he spots an opening and stabs the monster in the heart, scoring the win. He then absorbs the monster's core, which transforms his crest, granting him the strength and ranking of a knight. Seeing this, Siluka tells him he can now form a contract with one mage and teases him into making her his first pick. In the meantime, Lord Mesto sits in his domain, while his contracted mage Sartoris scolds him for sending men after Siluka. Sartoris also warns Mesto that he might be stripped of his rank, but Mesto refuses to take this seriously. Immediately, a guard storms in and reports that a random dude is outside, demanding that Mesto give up his crest and domain. When Mesto learns that the guy is only 3 men strong, he starts laughing, but his smile gets flushed down the toilet when Theo enters with Siluka and Orphan like they own the place. Sartoris realizes Siluka is the mage whom Mesto's men attacked, so he flips and voids his contract with Mesto to take Theo's side. Not wanting to let that stand, Mesto takes up his weapon to fight, but Theo intercepts and overpowers him like he's nothing. When Mesto tries to attack again, Orphan holds a knife to his neck, threatening to unalive him if he doesn't surrender. As a result, Mesto is forced to transfer his crest and domain to Theo before he's kicked out like he's just lost his sax. A bit later, Siluka tells Theo they'll be joining the Alliance faction, which shocks Sartoris because all their neighbors belong to the rival Federation faction. Even so, Siluka claims it's what Theo wants, and although Theo is also surprised, she reminds him that she'll help him achieve his dreams by any means necessary. The following day, news of Mesto's defeat reaches a neighboring lord named David, who learns that Theo has been making big moves. When he discovers that Theo aims to join the Alliance, he smirks, knowing it gives him an excuse to go to war, win, and conquer Theo's domain.
Sure, buddy.
Although Moreno, his contracted mage, advises him against starting a close border war, Lord David gives him the middle finger and claims he'll take Theo's crest as a souvenir. In the meantime, Theo struggles to process his status as the head of the territory, but Siluka tells him not to sweat it, since all 3 villages in the domain have already recognized him as their lord. Turns out Mesto taxed them heavily, so Theo insists he doesn't need their taxes, but Siluka tells him they're necessary to keep the domain afloat. He then recalls that he only wanted to achieve a rank high enough to govern his hometown, but Siluka tells him he's already reached that rank. Out of curiosity, she asks for more details about his village, so he reveals it's an impoverished place where the people barely manage to survive. When he mentions that he left to level up, Siluka realizes he feels like he abandoned them, and that his quest to become stronger is just an excuse to run from that guilt. Theo's expression confirms her assumption, but she reminds him that she'll do anything to help him achieve his goals. Later that afternoon, Orphan meets with Siluka and reports that Lord David will attack soon, since he's recently hired mercenaries and his troops are itching for a fight. With this in mind, Orphan suggests hiring mercenaries of their own, but Seleucus refuses and considers calling a friend instead. After the meeting, Seleucus summons a black kitty named Balguri and begs him to help deliver a message to her friend, Aishela. The name Aishela sends a chill down Balguri's spine since he's always uncomfortable around that chick. But he agrees to deliver the message after Seleucus promises to buy him his favorite treats. Later on, Theo meets Seleucus and asks why she's still up, and she admits she's anxious about when David will attack. Deep down, Theo suspects she's doing all this because she didn't want to be contracted to her original master, Lord Viller. Seleucus confirms this, explaining that she never wanted to be contracted to anyone, since most lords crave crests and power, which leads to an endless cycle of war. She believes that whoever completes the Emperor's holy seal and restores order to the world must be someone like Lord Leon, the legendary hero who never lost sight of his ideals. Theo compares himself to that hero, claiming his own ideals are pretty trivial, but Seleucus disagrees. After declaring for what feels like the millionth time that she's on his side, Theo decides to leave everything in her hands and follow her lead. That evening, as David assembles his army, Marina warns him to be careful about launching an all-out attack, since they'll barely have enough money to keep their territory afloat if they lose. David boasts that losing isn't part of his plan, and that he'll seize Theo's fortune once he wins. He then acknowledges that Theo has a powerful mage on his side and asks Marino to help him out. The mouthy mage agrees, claiming Seleucus will be an easy win. The following day, as David's forces approach the battlefield, Seleucus informs Theo but tells him to stand down until her backup arrives. Moments later, Aishela appears at the castle, and Seleucus gets excited, bragging to Theo that the war is now a guaranteed win. Outside, Aishela sprints and hugs Seleucus because it's been a long time since they saw each other, but Aishela's mood shifts when she realizes Theo is Seleucus' master. Since Theo isn't built like a Giga Chad, Aishela questions Seleucus why she signed up to serve a loser like him. A thought Aishela likes that Seleucus has good eyes. She threatens to chop off Theo's sausage if he's too hard on Seleucus.
Oh, hell no!
After that, Aishela joins Seleucus and Orphan at the castle gates, waiting for David's army to attack. While observing the enemy forces, Orphan notices that Marino isn't present, so Seleucus figures he might be using an invisibility spell. Just then, Lord David orders his men to attack, and Theo's side spreads out across the battlefield to hold them off. As the fight breaks out, Seleucus uses her magic to surround and electrocute a wave of soldiers. However, Marino catches her off guard and sends her flying to the ground. Seeing him up close, Seleucus realizes he's been targeting her all along, but she finds it strange that he's leaving his master exposed. Marino replies that his side is guaranteed to win if he takes her hostage, and he's confident he can subdue her. Meanwhile, Aishela effortlessly wipes out an unlucky wave of soldiers. While waiting for enemy reinforcements, she notices they aren't attacking her at all. As the remaining soldiers flee, Aishela chases after them, only to realize too late that they were luring her into a trap. Even so, she turns the tables and attacks the squad leader, but ends up kissing him because he put up a good fight.
What?
Unfortunately, she starts choking him, prompting him to order his soldiers to stab her through his body. As Aishela hears this, she lets go at the last second and allows the guy to escape. But since she likes him, she even yells that they should grab drinks after the battle.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
Meanwhile, Orphan faces off against a group of skilled soldiers, but despite being outnumbered, he takes them down easily with his overwhelming speed. When Lord David sees the bodies Orphan is dropping, he orders a man named Gluck to deal with him. Gluck assumes a steel form and grins when Orphan's daggers fail to pierce his skin. When Gluck charges in to finish him off, Orphan effortlessly dodges his attacks and counters by stabbing him in the eye. Back in the mage fight, Marino realizes he's already burning out, so he decides to finish Seleucus with one final deadly strike. Before that can happen, Theo storms in and asks to fight on Seleucus' behalf, since he's been sitting idle since the war began. Seleucus agrees, and Theo clashes swords with Marino, easily keeping up thanks to Marino's exhaustion. Realizing he's reached his limit, Marino attempts one last lethal attack, but Theo counters it and defeats him. When news of Marino's defeat reaches Lord David, he starts laughing like he's lost his mind, only to throw down his sword and announce his surrender. He then declares that he wants to become Theo's subordinate, believing his territory stands a better chance of survival under Theo's rule. Although this catches Theo off guard, he accepts David's offer by absorbing his crest, ascending to the court rank of Baron. Later that evening, Priestess Priscilla and her fellow church members from the Order of the House of Farnese show up to greet Theo, but Seleucus shuts them out like YouTube ads. Priscilla then tries to explain that she's come to support Theo in his divine battle to subdue chaos, but Seleucus tells them to leave. Theo hears the commotion, and Siluka explains that he shouldn't meet with the House of Farnes since they're just pawns of a religious sect. Despite her explanation, Theo refuses and reminds her that the House of Farnes goes around healing wounds and illnesses. Siluka then clashes with the church, confirming rumors that they've been trying to confiscate crests, and that once they learn she's a mage, they label her a slave to the villainous demon who controls chaos. They go back and forth like cats and dogs, and Theo eventually opens the door to welcome the sect. As soon as Priscilla sees him, she happily introduces herself, while Siluka facepalms, realizing they're in for a long ride. Later, they hold a feast celebrating the defeat of Neiman, a local aristocrat who submitted to their will after a successful coup. With that, they acquire Western Savis, and David is thrilled with the outcome, saying it won't be long before Theo rules over Savis. Not wanting to ruin the mood, Siluka tells David and Marino that Theo's goal isn't conquest, but to defeat Viscount Rossini, the current Lord of Sistina, his hometown, and save his people. David recalls that the island belongs to the Union, meaning that reclaiming Sistina would make it difficult to maintain standing within it. Siluka's plan is for Theo to first switch to the Alliance before reclaiming his hometown. Theo looks at her cluelessly and tells Siluka it's the first time he's hearing about this plan. She apologizes, saying she couldn't find the right time to tell him. Putting that aside, Siluka tells him he needs a family name now that he's a baron, and suggests Cornero, the name of a hero from his hometown who united the lands, only to be betrayed by Rossini just before completing his work. Making Theo a descendant of Cornero would give the people hope, and it would feel natural for him to reclaim what once belonged to the hero. After hearing her out, Theo marvels at Siluka's foresight and tells her he likes how she always keeps him in mind, just as she promised. With that, Siluka sets her plan in motion by having Marino contact the King of Savis so that Theo can join the Alliance. Marino, whose job is to get the king to recognize Theo's independence, says it won't be easy since Theo has claimed the western portion of the king's land. After that meeting, Siluka meets with Sartoris to discuss helping Theo climb the ranks. Sartoris tells her she's been overstepping her boundaries, and rumors are spreading that she's the one ruling while Theo is just her big daddy puppet. Siluka says that isn't her intention, and while Sartoris believes her, he asks whether she ever truly listens to Theo or understands his intentions. She reflects on this and later goes to Theo's room, as she tries to talk to him about her actions. Irvin arrives and informs them that a chaos disaster has broken out in the castle town. They rush there and find a fire outbreak caused by a demon from the Aether. Siluka tends to an injured man while Theo evacuates people from a burning building. Suddenly, the demon reveals itself, and Theo tries to face the living fire with just his sword, but makes no progress. Siluka immediately calls on Isella, who lures the monster away. Meanwhile, Priscilla takes over healing the injured old man, giving Siluka the opening she needs to use water magic to douse the demon. She traps it in a huge water bubble, but it explodes and nearly takes out the people nearby, forcing Siluka to shield them with a barrier. Left exposed, Theo protects her with his shield from the shockwave, but she passes out. Siluka wakes up the following noon to Isella happily hugging her. Once she learns that Theo is dealing with the aftermath of the fire, she leaps out of bed and rushes to find him. There she thanks him for saving her and notices he's been badly injured, so she takes him somewhere private to tend to his wounds. In that moment, Siluka realizes that what Sartoris told her about her actions was right. But to her surprise, Theo thanks her for making his dream possible. He tells her to keep doing what she's been doing, though she promises to consult him first before making decisions. Their next destination is a meeting with the mage leader, Abasudo, to negotiate. Abasudo is Siluka's adoptive father, who takes in youngsters with magical potential and nurtures them. Days later, Moreno informs them that the king of Savis angrily rejected the negotiation, insisting that all of Savis belongs to him. Siluka realizes the ruler is preparing for war, so she asks that letters be sent to the free lords to form an alliance. Within a few days, the ruler of Savis marches out with his army to reclaim his land. Theo, Lassic, and Neiman join forces and watch as the army advances across the field. Siluka, on the other hand, prays for help, and to her surprise, that evening, the people they saved in the castle town arrive with torches to support Theo. They tell him they're ready to lay down their lives for the help he gave them during their time of crisis. Siluka tells Theo it's his duty to fulfill his people's wishes, urging him to raise his flag and grant them its divine blessing. Theo reflects on what he wants to protect, and after chanting what they need most to face their enemies, his crest glows and forms a giant patriot flag. With that, he declares that he'll take responsibility for their lives. The men roar in unison as the flag descends, marking them with a bird emblem that looks suspiciously like fairy tales. The next morning, they clash with the king's armed forces and perform well by attacking each platoon in groups. The Savis soldiers are easily overwhelmed thanks to Theo's tactics, with skilled mages and fighters tipping the scales in their favor. Siluka also leads a platoon, cutting down most of the enemy troops. By the time the king of Savas realizes what's happening, his entire army is surrounded and nearly wiped out. With no other option, he flees. Later that evening, Seleucus reunites with Theo and praises him for defeating the king of Savas. Their forces chant in celebration, and Priscilla marvels, declaring that Theo must join the Order of the Crest no matter the cost. Seleucus, meanwhile, considers negotiating directly with Valdrind, and later travels there to speak with the Margrave. She tells Abasudo and Marine that Theo wishes to join the alliance. When Marine learns of Theo's interest, she asks for time to think it over, so Seleucus walks away, smiling like she's gotten the deal. In her absence, Abasudo advises Marine not to let Theo join her side, since it might encourage other free-minded lords to follow his example. Marine reflects on this and realizes she'll need to wage war against Theo. The following day, Abasudo summons Seleucus and warns her that Theo must forfeit his territories or face the full might of the Valdrind army. The warning shocks Seleucus, but even though the odds of her side winning are about the same as Ice Spice winning a Grammy, she insists on settling things on the battlefield. As Seleucus leaves Maraine's territory, she considers joining the Union since the alliance has given them to eat dog poop. Still, Icehella worries they might be rejected because Seleucus voided her mage contract with Villar. When Seleucus arrives to see Villar, Margaret, the Lord's assistant, tells her to leave because Villar has no intention of meeting her. Margaret already knows about Seleucus' failed attempt to join the alliance and is furious that Seleucus is treating her faction as a second option. Seleucus argues that joining the Union would benefit Lord Villar, since refusing would leave him vulnerable to Marine's forces. Margaret boasts that Lord Villar isn't the type to get trounced, but this makes Seleucus question whether it's the same Villar known for his love for hot women. Margaret replies that she's aware of how people see him and explains that his desire to contract only hot mages is out of consideration for his people. According to her, Villar nullifies contracts once his mages reach a certain age so they can marry and have offspring. That evening, Seleucus enters a council meeting with Theo and the others, informing them that Marine and the king of Savas will attack soon. Theo suggests a counterattack from the castle, but Marino argues against it since the enemy army is 4 times larger. Taking this into account, Seleucus proposes attacking from 3 different flanks, and they agree. The following day, Seleucus notices Marine's army isn't at full strength and wonders if it's because they know she visited Villar. At the first flank, Icehella orders her archers to fire at an enemy squad, but the arrows fail to pierce their armor. Gluck then attempts to hurl a massive rock at them, only for it to be shattered by a magic arrow. Soon after, the enemy begins bombarding the castle walls with magic blasts, forcing Icehella to order a retreat. As they fall back, she charges the enemy squad, using her overwhelming speed and brute force to unalive them one by one. However, while dodging multiple attacks mid-air, she gets unlucky and is shot down. When Seleucus hears the news, she rushes to Icehella's side and breaks down upon realizing she's near death. At that moment, Priscilla arrives and offers to heal Icehella, telling Seleucus to pull herself together and focus on the war. Meanwhile, Theo lures enemy soldiers into the castle, allowing Seleucus to trap them while his troops finish them off. As the enemy begins to retreat, a soldier reports that David is struggling at the west gate. At the west gate, David and his squad retreat through a narrow passage toward the castle. Realizing he can now fight the soldiers one-on-one, David turns around and engages them head-on, shocking the king of Savas. As the king attempts to order a retreat, he notices Gluck and Irvin already cutting through his men, so he takes a second sword and decides to confront David himself. The two clash, and David easily keeps pace, eventually slicing one of the king's swords in half. Enraged, the king of Savas launches a final high-speed strike, only to be cut down by David's blade. With the king dead, Theo's side claims victory. However, Theo refuses to take all of Savas's land, instead granting it to David, since he was the one who defeated the king. Theo plans to use this as leverage to negotiate a ceasefire with Marine. Although David likes the plan, he questions what Theo will gain by forfeiting Savas's territory. Seleucus insists that Theo will retain his reputation, and Theo adds that he gets to keep Seleucus, since it's thanks to her that his dreams will come true. Hearing this makes Seleucus' cheek turn red, but she brushes it off, claiming she's only doing all of this because she's Theo's contracted mage. That evening, Seleucus meets with Abasudo to negotiate the terms of a ceasefire, and is shocked to learn that Theo would have to die first. When she returns to inform her people, David and Priscilla lash out, declaring they'll never give up Theo's head, and even the other soldiers voice their agreement. The following day, Marine's forces march toward Theo's castle, and Seleucus notices they're advancing in full strength, confident that Villar won't come to Theo's aid. Thinking back on it, Seleucus wonders if Villar has been waiting for this exact moment to strike Marine. She's proven right when Villar's forces emerge from the woods and join the fight. With Villar's intervention, Marine and her army are driven out of Theo's territory, and Seleucus hugs Theo Theo, relieved that they've secured yet another victory. Afterward, Lord Viller marches into Theo's court and praises everyone for fighting well. Theo shows his respect by thanking Viller for the assistance, while Siluka apologizes for betraying him and forming a contract with Theo. Viller brushes it off as no big deal, noting that she's already helped him pry Savas away from the alliance. When he adds that he wants her back, Siluka asks what will happen to Theo, and Viller reveals he plans to make Theo the king of Savas. Everyone is thrilled by the offer, but Theo turns it down, instead offering to become Lord Viller's knight so he can stay with Siluka. Viller finds this strange, but agrees on the condition that Theo will live in his castle, and that he can use Siluka as he pleases. After the meeting, Siluka wonders if Theo has lost his mind, but Theo insists it's his decision and even hands over his court rank to David. As David accepts, he declares that his loyalty lies with Theo and promises to aid him whenever needed. Priscilla then offers to join Theo and Artuk, while Siluka walks away, quietly wondering if she's fallen in love with Theo. At the castle of the vampire king Mitri, the werewolf queen confronts him for refusing to fight against the Age of Chaos, asking why he's refusing, especially after fighting against the Chaos years ago, but he replies that he fought to survive and he doesn't want to fight anymore. As the werewolf queen is about to leave, she is stopped by Yana, a descendant of the Black Witches. Yana warns her that once the Chaos is vanquished, the power of crest and art will also disappear. Still, the queen replies that she would gladly give up her powers if she could save her family from the chaos. Yana gets frustrated and asks Lord Mitri to get rid of her before she becomes his enemy, but he refuses because he doesn't want to harm a guest, so Yana tells him that she'll do it herself. In the forest surrounding Lord Mitri's castle, two werewolf twins are waiting for their mother to return, but Yana gets to them first and kidnaps them. At Castle Unicorn, Lord Viller welcomes Theo and puts him on guard duty, asking him to protect the castle whenever he is away, and later, Viller's contracted mages, Laura, Helga, and Colleen, introduce themselves to Siluka. Laura starts to tell Siluka that she heard of the rumors of how she was the smart type at the Magic Academy, but Margaret interrupts their conversation and tells them to prepare for the arrival of the Prince of Dartania, Lord Nilza Kutches, who will be attending a banquet at the castle that night. At the banquet, Lord Nilza talks about becoming emperor and says that his country, Dartania, is suitable for defending but not attacking. He then tells Viller that he has his support if he wants to become emperor. Lord Viller replies that he prefers beauty over ambition, and that if becoming emperor would give him the most beautiful life, then he will become emperor. When Lord Nilza hears this, he shocks everyone by remarking that if Viller had no ambition at all, then he would have offed him, seized his crest, and taken it back to Dartania. Lord Viller then introduces Theo to Milza, but Milza mentions that he heard the rumors that Theo gave up his status for a mage, and says that he has no interest in boring nobodies without ambition. But once he hears that Lord David is under Theo's command, his opinion changes. Later that night, while cleaning the library, Siluka teaches Theo about the history of the First Age of Chaos. She explains how white witches, vampires, artists, and werewolves appeared and fought against the chaos and formed a pact with Alturk. Theo worries that while the people of Alturk rose against the chaos, his homeland of Sistina is still under the clutches of chaos and the Rossini family. But Siluka assures him by promising that he will one day grow strong enough to save his homeland. Viller eventually summons them to meet Lady Zelma, the elder of the White Witches, who explains that something strange is happening in the Forest of Eternal Darkness. Count Viller orders Theo and Siluka to investigate the werewolves who have left their homes and headed to the Forest of Eternal Darkness, which is normally vampire territory. In the Forest of Eternal Darkness, the werewolves are tracking the kidnapped twins. However, Yana appears and tells the queen to come with her alone if she wants to save the twins, so the queen follows her. When Theo and Siluka reach the forest, they meet the werewolves, but they are hostile to them. Just then, a talking bat suddenly appears and asks the werewolves to let them through to the Vampire King's castle. At the vampire's castle, Mitri reveals that the werewolf queen is with Yana, then asks them to deliver a message to Lord Viller that he intends to return the world to a state of eternal chaos. Siluka asks why he wants chaos after fighting against it in the past, and Mitri reveals that if they ever fuse the crests and recreate the Emperor's seal to vanquish the chaos, all vampires will lose their powers and eternal life. Siluka asks if he was responsible for the wedding tragedy, but he gives her a terrifying look, causing Theo to jump in front of her and draw his sword. Mitri asks Theo if he wants to fight, and Theo says yes, even though he feels like pissing his pants. Lord Mitri then tells them that he doesn't like fighting and reveals that the werewolf queen is under the castle before vanishing into tiny bats. Under the castle, Yana repeatedly injures the werewolf queen to slow down her regeneration powers, then says that with the chaos core of the queen, she will be able to summon another demon lord, making the queen realize that she was the one who caused the wedding tragedy. Theo and Siluka arrive under the castle to engage Yana, then tell her that the vampire lord has left the castle, shocking Yana. Yana sends gargoyles to attack them, and Siluka uses her lightning magic to destroy the gargoyles. However, the creatures are too much for her to hold back alone, so Theo rushes to her side to protect her. Yana enchants her magic broom and launches it at Theo. Then Siluka erects a magic barrier in front of him, but it breaks through and goes after Theo. So Theo uses the power of his crest to deflect the broom missile, redirecting it into the ceiling, shocking Yana. The werewolf queen seizes the opportunity to transform, then rushes to her daughters and cuts their restraints. Then she goes after Yana, dodging all her attacks, and when Yana tries to fly away on her broom, the queen slashes her leg, but gets hit with an attack at the same time. When the werewolf twins see their mother injured, they also transform and go after Yana, but she manages to escape, dodging blasts from Siluka's spells. With the werewolf queen severely injured and unable to regenerate, she leaves her daughters, Emma and Luna, with her last words and passes away. At the home of the werewolves, they mourn their leader and swear to carry on her legacy. After that, the next leader of the werewolves thanks Theo for bringing back his sisters and his mother's soul. As Theo takes over the vampire lord's castle, Siluka tells him that the residents of the Forest of Eternal Darkness have pledged their allegiance to him, but Theo notes that they don't want him and await the return of their vampire lord. Theo thinks that since the forest is part of the demon realm, it would be a good reference if he were to govern his homeland of Sistina, which is also part of the demon realm. Siluka informs Theo that Zelma went after Yana, but couldn't capture her, noting that the Black Witch is extremely powerful, so Theo promises her that he will get stronger. As Siluka also promises the same, Orphan shows up with the werewolf twins, whom he is training to serve Theo as maids. Emma and Luna rush to Theo, saying they also want to get stronger, so Theo agrees and announces that they'll be heading to the north of the forest. At Castle Unicorn, Lord Viller receives a letter inviting him to a meeting of the Union Lords, then notes that even though he doesn't want to go, he has no choice. Margaret notes that after his exploits, everyone has been wondering what his next move will be, and that in her opinion, he is worthy of high praise. But Viller replies that he doesn't think so, especially because the leader of the Union, Lord Alexis, does not wish for war. After that, Lord Viller asks Margaret when her next birthday is, which depresses Margaret because Viller will cancel her contract when she reaches 25. At a chamber in Castle Unicorn, Siluka is watching Laura perform a complicated spell and is impressed, asking Laura to teach her. Then Margaret passes by with an angry look on her face, so Siluka decides to speak with Lord Viller. Lord Viller tells Siluka that Margaret's 25th birthday is coming up, meaning that her contract with him will end, but Siluka tells him that even though he is thinking about Margaret's future, she would prefer to remain contracted to him. Lord Viller replies that although that makes him happy, he can't show preferential treatment to Margaret, so he asks Siluka to prepare a farewell birthday banquet for Margaret. He then tells Siluka that he wants to take her and Theo to the upcoming meeting of the Union Lords because the ruler of Sistina, Lord Rossini, will also be attending the meeting, so Siluka thanks him for his help. At the birthday banquet, Margaret and Viller arrive, leaving everyone in awe, and then all of Margaret's well-wishers come up to her to congratulate her. As the dancing begins, Viller and Margaret take the floor, moving like they already rehearsed their moves, leaving the onlookers in awe. Siluka wonders to Theo why Viller and Margaret can't be together even though they have the kind of chemistry that makes Marie Curie jealous. So Theo tells her that it is a situation they have no control over. Theo then drags Siluka to the dance floor to cheer her up, but he starts stepping on her feet like it's a wrestling match. She then decides to teach him and tells him to pull her closer, but he pulls her too close, and it makes her wonder if he wants to clap. Lord Nilza asks Theo why he was dancing like a fool, but Theo takes the high road and brushes off his insult, so Milza gets annoyed and challenges Theo to a duel. As they step outside and start fighting, Milza notices Theo's defensive style of fighting and tells him that a lord should not fight like that. Then Nilza proceeds to fold Theo. After defeating Theo, Nilza says that men like Theo, who have no ambition, are not fit to be lords because they cause the age of chaos to drag on. Theo replies that he has a path he has sworn to follow, and asks Milza if he seeks oppression. However, this annoys Milza, who leaves saying that he wants to be the sword of whoever becomes the emperor, and he hopes that will be Lord Viller. After Milza leaves, Siluka rushes to Theo's side, and he tells her that though Milza will lead the death of many of his enemies in his wake, he may also lead the death of many of his allies in his wake. Siluka assures him that the path he follows stems from the wishes of those who suffer from chaos and oppression, meaning that he won't be the only one following that path. Then she promises to also walk with him till the end. After the party, Margaret thanks Viller for the celebration and admits that she would like to serve him longer. However, Villa replies that since she is a mage priestess from D'Artagnan, the kingdom's officials will give him trouble if he keeps her any longer. He then admits that he relied on her too much, as he has no one else to consult on foreign matters, so she recommends Siluca and Laura. Villa then asks why he was given the nickname Plotful Earl, saying that he treasures women more than anything. But Margaret disagrees, asking him if he avoids getting seriously involved with women. Lord Villa turns to a picture of his mother, Lady Floria, who was once the daughter of Jurgen Kreich, the founder of the Alliance. He reveals that his mother married into the Constance family, but his father defected to the union, causing his mother to treat him poorly as a youngster. Villa reveals that the abuse made him hate the Kreich family and the Alliance, and join the union as a member of the Constance family. Margaret asks Villa why he still has a picture of his mother, and he explains that his mother feared that his father would come to hate him for having the Kreich family blood in his veins, so she may have abused him to protect him. But since he may never be sure, he'd rather love the woman who gave birth to him. Hearing his story makes Margaret cry, and she confesses to Lord Villa that she always loved him, but he admits that she was right about him being unable to get seriously involved with women, and that although he reveres women, he is also terrified of them. The next day, in preparation for the meeting of the Union Lords, Lord Villa and his allies gather at a meeting where Siluca addresses them, telling Theo and David a march through the kingdom of Forbes, while the main unit will invade the kingdom of Clovis on their way to Jalusha, where the meeting of the Union Lords will be held. She tells them to welcome any lords that surrender to the Union and subjugate those that refuse, so they can attend the Lords' meeting with their conquered territories as gifts. When Theo, Lassic, and their forces reach the kingdom of Forbes, most of the lords instantly surrender, but they inform them that the king of Forbes has refused to defect from the alliance, and that Lords Brannis and Ladvan have also decided to side with the king. Siluca then asks Theo to take care of Lord Ladvan, while Lord Nilza says he'll single-handedly take care of Lord Brannis. Lord Nilza then rides to Lord Brannis's castle and strolls in like he owns the place, warning them to hand over their crests and leave the territory with their belongings in 3 days. But Lord Brannis instead proposes that they have a negotiation over drinks, while his daughters give Nilza a happy ending. When Nilza refuses his thought daughters, Brannis and his men decide to eliminate Nilza and take his crest. When Brannis's contracted mage sees this, he warns him that attacking an emissary will violate the Lord's code, but Brannis ignores him, so Nilza asks Brannis's mage to witness what is about to happen. As Brannis and his men go on the attack, Nilza uses his sword to clap Brannis's head. He then proceeds to unalive all his men one by one without breaking a sweat. After unaliving everyone, Nilza absorbs the crests of Brannis and his men, and asks the mage to relay what happened to Villa's army when they came to claim the castle. Then Nilza leaves to watch how Theo will handle Lord Ladvan. As Theo heads to Lord Ladvan's castle, Siluca tells him that they have to capture a town of civilians before they can get to Ladvan's castle, which would lead to severe bloodshed. So he decides to negotiate first to see if he can avoid the battle. Theo arrives at Ladvan Torius's castle to ask him to surrender, but Siluca has already informed him that Ladvan would never surrender. So his next best plan is to ask the Lord to fight the battle outside the village to avoid civilian casualties. When Lord Ladvan meets Theo, he tells him he has no intention of surrendering, as he plans to offer his allegiance to Lady Marine in the future, and asks Theo to leave. Theo admits that he won't be able to reach the castle with his citizens protecting him, then warns Ladvan that even if he leaves, David will attack with his army of 30,000 men. Theo then suggests that if Lord Ladvan fights outside the town, he can keep his people from harm while maintaining his loyalty to the Alliance. Lord Ladvan decides to accept his fate and fight outside the town, but his people are not having it, because they want to fight alongside their lord. Ladvan then tells his people that the only way to protect the town is if he dies in battle. However, his people respond that they want him to keep ruling the town, and that it doesn't matter whether he joins the Alliance or the Union. Theo feels defeated by their devotion and begs Lord Ladvan to join the Union so he can continue serving his people rather than the Alliance. Lord Ladvan accepts his proposal and announces to his people that he will be joining the Union so he can keep serving them, and the town starts rejoicing. Lord Ladvan then asks Theo if he would have preferred to take his crest and castle, but Theo tells him that all he cares about is that there is no senseless bloodshed. When Lord Ladvan hears this, he is impressed and asks to pledge allegiance to Theo, but Theo tells him that he is currently serving under Lord Diller, so Lord Ladvan asks him to consider it in the future, which Theo accepts. Meanwhile, Lord David is in a vicious duel with the King of Forbes and manages to unsubscribe him from life. At Castle Unicorn, Laura reports Lassic's victory in Forbes, and Lord Viller tells her that Lassic's accomplishments forced the King of Clovis to also surrender his castle without the loss of a single soldier. She also mentions that Theo and Nils's accomplishment must have also shattered the enemy's morale. Then Viller remarks that they both carried out their conquests while staying true to their nature. Then Lord Viller steps out to the balcony of his castle to praise his army, announcing that the path to Jalucia has been opened. At the Alliance Castle, news of Theo and Nils's conquest in Forbes reaches Lady Moraine, so she worries about how the lords of the kingdoms near Forbes and Clovis are taking the news and asks Abasudo to keep an eye on the Alliance. Lords? At a Union Congress event, Laura starts simping because she wants to see the hot leader of the Union, Lord Alexis. But then the Earl of La Couleurs, Lord Clute, shows up and greets Lord Viller. Lord Clute is excited to see him and says that he should receive a hero's welcome, but that some Union lords won't be happy. Lord Clute then announces that now that they have the upper hand, they should invade the Alliance and conquer Waldland. On hearing this, a lord, Marquis Dawson, approaches Lord Viller and asks him why he didn't maintain the ceasefire the Union agreed on, but Lord Viller tells him that he wasn't consulted on the matter. Marquis Dawson then asks if he will adhere to whatever is decided at the Congress, and Lord Viller agrees. Siluka asks Lord Viller why the lords think that peace will continue, and he tells her that since the war started 30 years ago, many regions have remained unaffected. After that, Lord Clute tells them that the Congress will be their chance to launch a full-scale war if they want to survive. When Lord Alexis appears, all the ladies start hiding their wedding rings, and even Laura starts blushing, hoping that she'll smash that night. Alexis greets Count Viller and thanks Siluka for saving his life during the wedding disaster, then meets Theo and excitedly tells him that he would like to arrange a meeting with him later. Later on, Lord Viller spots Lord Rossini, the corrupt Duke of Theo's former village, and introduces Theo and Siluka to him. When Lord Rossini hears the name Theo Cornaro, he asks Theo if Cornaro is his real name, but Theo says that he adopted the name because of his homeland. Lord Rossini tells Theo that the name isn't something a useless nobody can just randomly take. So Theo stops hiding his animosity and tells Lord Rossini that it wasn't random and that he will soon return to take over Sistina. When Theo and Siluka return to their quarters, Lord Alexis suddenly shows up, wanting to talk privately. Theo is worried because he isn't worthy of having a conversation with him, but Lord Alexis says he's heard the story of how Theo came from nothing and became the ruler of Sevis, only to give everything up for Siluka. He tells them that he still loves Lady Moraine and would also give up everything for her, but Siluka reminds him that he can't do that. Lord Alexis says he dreams of uniting all the lords across the continent to end the era of chaos forever, and moved by his conviction, Theo promises to help him fulfill his dream and also to help reunite him with Lady Moraine. As Lord Alexis is about to leave, Irvin senses an incoming attack and quickly alerts everyone. As Siluka casts a magic wall to block incoming arrows, hooded enemies start to pour in, so the werewolf twins transform and start tearing through the enemies like tissue paper. Theo notices the Rossini flag on an attacker and realizes that the enemies are after him, and when Siluka is about to be stabbed, her black cat, Balgary, jumps in and saves her life. After the fight ends, Irvin reports to Siluka that while he was busy fighting the hidden enemies, he encountered a shadow assassin who managed to get away. After that, Alexis departs, feeling guilty about the attempted assassination. But Theo knows he was the real target. Siluka remarks that because Alexis was in danger, Rossini will be expelled from the Union, giving them a chance to make their move. At the Alliance Castle, when Lady Moraine is informed about the assassination attempt on Lord Alexis, she almost flips out, but relaxes when she hears that he is safe. Then she wonders if it was the same people from the wedding tragedy and recalls the day of the tragedy. She remembers returning home in her wedding dress and breaking down in tears as she realized that their dream of uniting the continent through marriage was shattered and that they were never meant to be together. The next day, Theo and Siluka report the assassination attempt to Lord Viller and also tell him that Lord Alexis still loves Lady Moraine. Viller is pleased to hear this, so he decides to share the story of how Alexis and Moraine fell in love. 6 years ago, at college in the Kingdom of Aramu, Lady Moraine's carriage was stopped by Lord Alexis, who was admiring the stones used to pave the road. The moment he saw Moraine, he fell hard for her and tried to riz her up, but she wasn't easy like your girlfriends. Alexis started spamming her with love letters and even designed a giant rose of gems in her garden just to get her attention. So she finally decided to meet him at a noble's masquerade ball he often attends. At the ball, a man tried to pick up Moraine, but he turned aggressive after she told him to keep walking. When he grabbed her, Alexis stepped in to stop him, but the man knocked him out with a single punch. Moraine immediately retaliated by kicking the man in the sacks, making sure the idiot would never procreate again. Moraine took him to her room, and after Alexis woke up, she revealed that she found out he was the Prince of Jalusia, and Alexis also admitted that he knew who she was. Moraine then asked him why he fell in love with her, even when he knew that their families were at war, and Alexis replied that their names didn't mean anything to him, and that he simply fell in love at first sight. Moraine then kissed him as a thank you for the giant rose and left, saying that they could never be together. Noticing that Lady Moraine was depressed, her attendant tricked her into seeing Alexis again, as he was teaching some youngsters how to sing and then giving them some money. Moraine couldn't understand the motive behind his actions and confronted him for naively offering charity just to satisfy his own ego, arguing that he was only creating inequality that would eventually cause him trouble. Alexis admits she might be right, but he explains that his actions weren't about charity because the children have simply found something to look forward to by singing together. He believes that while charity can bring appreciation, it fails to bring true joy to those who receive it. When Moraine argues that a lord's duty should be focused on governance rather than happiness, Alexis disagrees. He claims that any leader who forgets to bring joy to his people will eventually only bring them grief. Moraine tells him that his wishes are impossible, but he replies that if he continues, he will surely get closer to his ideals. On hearing this, Moraine kisses him and decides she will marry him, so she tells Alexis to wait for her. Villers finishes his story, saying that if they love each other, then they should be together, no matter their status. Later that day, during the Union's Congress, they all agree on Rossini's expulsion from the Union, and they move on to the next matter, where Marquis Dawson blames Lord Villers for stopping the chances of peace by going to war with the Alliance. To answer this, Villers asks Theo to explain the circumstances of the war to the Congress. At the Alliance Castle, a messenger from Lord Pavel of Stark informs Lady Moraine that he won't be pledging allegiance to her because he has no emotional connection to her. But Lady Moraine knows that Lord Pavel simply thinks that she isn't worth it. After Theo explains why he and Lord Villers went to war against the Alliance, Villers clarifies that Theo went after a lord who broke the code. But the Alliance decided to launch an attack on him, convincing the Congress that the Alliance was at fault. But Marquis Dawson still says that if he hadn't helped Theo when the Alliance rejected him, they would still be at peace. When Lord Villers hears this, he announces that the Union represents peace and freedom, so he must protect anyone who joins the Union, and manages to get the Congress to agree with him. After Lord Villers finishes addressing the Congress, Lord Alexis announces the wishes of the Congress to confront the Alliance in military warfare. Lord Alexis then admits that he personally doesn't want to go to war with the Alliance, but he will agree with the decision of the Congress, so he addresses them and admits that he no longer feels worthy of being their leader, since he only took the title of ruler of Jalusia from his father. Lord Alexis then nominates Lord Villers as the new leader, promising to be the first to offer his services to him, but Lord Villers refuses the endorsement, saying he doesn't want to fight his cousin, Lady Moraine Kreisch, taking advantage of the situation. Marquis Dawson announces that Lord Alexis will have to continue to be their leader and that they should pursue their initial stance of peace. Lord Clute opposes the decision, warning that the Alliance won't accept peace talks and that they will certainly regroup and attack the Union once again. But Marquis Dawson gaslights him into accepting the peace talks. As the Congress comes to an end, Siluka notes that the Union has squandered an opportunity to destroy the Alliance and wonders if Altic will be able to withstand renewed attacks from the Alliance. At the Alliance Castle, Abasudo relays the decision of the Union Congress to Lady Moraine, who gets angry that they would propose peace after taking over Alliance territories. Abasudo continues that the Union wishes to continue with the peace treaty agreed on before the wedding tragedy, where she weds the Prince of Jalusia to unite the two families. Lady Moraine then orders Abasudo to prepare for the battle with Lord Pavel of Stark, which she will personally join. Then, Moraine imagines wedding Alexis one last time and gives up on a future with him. Some days after the Congress, Lord Pavel of Stark arrives at Castle Unicorn asking for assistance against Moraine's army, but Lord Villers answers that the Union is in the middle of peace talks with the Alliance. Lord Pavel replies that he isn't expecting anything from the Union and tells Lord Villers that if he makes a move, other territories will join Stark and leave the Alliance. Lord Nilza also tells Villers that if he agrees to make a move, then he will convince his father to send troops from Dartania. Siluka then advises Lord Villers not to follow the Union's peace policy and go to war for the sake of Altic, but Villers refuses to betray Lord Alexis. Siluka gets pissed, saying that Lord Alexis' wish will destroy the Union and that he should forsake his honor to save Altic. Lord Villers dismisses her and Theo, sending them back to their territory. As they leave, Lord Nilza tells Villers that Siluka gave him good advice, but he waves him off, saying it's his own decision to make. Then Lord Villers advises Lord Pavel to swear allegiance to Lady Moraine, but he angrily refuses, saying that he has no intention of pledging allegiance to Lady Moraine, and storms off. Lord Nilza then announces that you'll be going to watch how Marine and her army plan on attacking Lord Pavel's impenetrable fortress. As Seluka and Theo travel back to his territory in the dark forest, Seluka is still upset because Viller ignored her advice, so Theo invites her for a walk through his territory to cheer her up. The next day, as Theo and Seluka tour the territory, they notice that the people living in the forest have not yet accepted them. Soon it starts raining, so they take shelter inside a hollow tree. Since they're drenched from the rain, Theo tells Seluka to strip, but she knows he just wants to see what she's packing. Theo then tries to light a fire, but the firewood is also wet, so he shares a blanket with Seluka to keep them warm. Theo recalls how he used to wander around like a homeless person when he was still alone, and Seluka tells him she is happy to have him by her side. Then Theo admits that he invited her to tour the domain with him because he wanted to give her a break from everything. He also tells her that he was worried she would become Lord Viller's mage, but she assures him that she'll never leave his side as long as he needs her. Theo hugs Seluka, clearly showing her how important she is to him, so Seluka confesses her feelings for him, and Theo admits that he loves her too. Then they start kissing. Meanwhile, the battle between Moraine's army and Lord Pavel of Star begins as they try to access the fortress. But Milza shows up and starts single-handedly eliminating Moraine's knights like they owe him money, while Moraine watches. During a meeting with her knights, they struggle to find a way to attack Lord Pavel's fortress, as it is protected by the terrain and naval forces, with D'Artagnan forces supplying them with food and water. When Albasudo suggests artificially generating chaos miasma from the nearby rotten sea and using it to poison the enemy fortress, Lady Moraine agrees to break the Lord's code by using chaos hazard in war. Her knights are surprised by her decision, but she insists that if she wants to unite the continent, she can't be idealistic and useless. She then orders her army to unalive Lord Pavel's entire clan to send a message, even if they surrender. As she leaves the meeting, she asks her attendants to arrange a meeting between her and Nilza. Lady Moraine's mages head to the rotten sea and generate the chaos miasma, letting the wind carry it toward the enemy fortress. When the soldiers see the incoming poison cloud, it is too late, as the poison engulfs the fortress, instantly poisoning all the soldiers. Once the miasma clears, Moraine and her army invade the fortress and easily slaughter every soldier in sight. When Lady Moraine finds Lord Pavel, he asks if the knights have lost their honor, but Moraine says that the Kreische family style is to fight rationally. Lady Moraine then eliminates Lord Pavel and takes his crest, while her soldiers set the bodies in the fortress on fire. As Milza watches the massacre from afar, Lady Moraine's attendants approach him and invite him to a meeting with her. As Moraine stares at her bloodied hands, wondering what Alexis would think of what she did, her attendants return. They inform her that Milza has accepted the meeting, on the condition that she comes alone, so Moraine agrees to go, noting that, unless D'Artagnan joins the alliance, they cannot defeat Alturk. Meanwhile, Milza considers abandoning Lord Viller because he lacks the ambition to take over the entire continent. When Moraine meets Milza, she tells him about how she's on a mission to unite the continent and merge all the crests to bring an end to the Age of Chaos, and asks him to join the alliance. Lord Nilza ignores her speech and asks her about her relationship with Alexis. She says it's all in the past, but Milza tells her to stop lying to herself. Milza then agrees to join the alliance on the condition that she lets him hit. When Moraine's attendants hear this, they start to flip out, but Moraine stops them. She then warns Milza that even if she sleeps with him, she'll never belong to him, but Milza says that he doesn't mind, asking her to treat it as a ceremony to mark their alliance. So Lady Moraine accepts the condition. Some days later, Moraine prepares to march toward Viller's territory, and her mage informs her that Milza has offed his father and taken over his kingdom to join the alliance. So Moraine is glad that the happy ending she gave him wasn't a waste. Meanwhile, the White Witches of Alturk are alerted by the approaching army and cover the village roads with mist to force Moraine's allies, the Boltava army, to march directly toward Theo's territory. The new leader of the werewolves then orders his people to follow and keep track of Moraine's army without engaging them, and then he tells his brothers that he is going on a journey to find the vampire king, Lord Mitri, at Castle Unicorn. Lord Viller begins his own preparations, noting that ever since Moraine breached Alturk, she hasn't made a move, so he decides to attack rather than wait and sends a summons to his allies to unite under his command. Igor then spots Selja's contracted mage, Elet, who's been left behind. When he asks what she's doing, she answers that Selj never listens to her, especially now that Lord Viller is involved. Elet remarks that Selj will definitely get into trouble, so she decides to rush after him, saying she doesn't want to start looking for another contract. He sends orders for Lord David to invade the neighboring kingdom and instructs Theo to face the Boltava forces heading his way. News of the brewing war reaches Lord Viller's half-brothers, Selj and Igor, in the Kingdom of Regalia, and Selj prepares to set off to help him. Igor warns him to wait for the Kilis army to join them, but Selj argues that war is not predictable, so he rushes off, asking Igor to follow later with their army. At one of Lord Villar's allied kingdoms, the Queen of Hammon, Edokia, is receiving the bedroom princess treatment from her plot servants when she receives the summons from Lord Villar. Then Queen Edokia immediately agrees to join them with her massive warship named the Palace of the Sea. At another allied kingdom, the King of Kilis, Solon, prepares to join Villar with his soldiers, so he starts drinking booze with them and rallies them to fight like main characters who can never die. When another soldier asks what it means if he eventually dies, King Solon responds that it means he was only ever a supporting character, making the entire army erupt in laughter. As Theo prepares for the battle at the outskirts of his territory, Siluka informs him that the Boltava army greatly outnumbers them and that they should use their castle as a fortress. However, Theo doesn't want to turn the dark forest into a battlefield, so they head out to intercept the Boltava army outside the forest. At Castle Unicorn, Laura informs Lord Villar that Prince Mills's fleet of ships is approaching from the southern sea, but Villar senses that something is off, so he orders his admiral to be on alert and asks Colleen to ready the castle's mirror weapon while he heads down to the docks. At the docks, Margaret arrives by boat and informs him that Milza has defected to the Alliance, offing his own father and anyone who opposed him in the process. Villar realizes that he is cooked, but determines not to relinquish his crest without a fight, so he commands his ships to engage Milza's fleet. Villar's navy starts to attack the D'Artagnan fleet, only for Milza to launch a swift counterattack, boarding the ships and easily cutting down Villar's navy. The captain realizes that they don't stand a chance against Milza, so he breaks his ship's steering wheel and sets the ship on fire to take Milza down with him, but Milza proceeds to violate the ship captain and jumps off the burning ship. Meanwhile, Colleen and Laura use their mirror weapon to cover the retreat of their navy by focusing light lasers onto Milza's ships, burning them one after the other. Back at the palace, Margaret worries about Milza because he can change the outcome of a war all by himself, so Villar assures her that if he can defeat Milza, his kingdom, D'Artagnan, will want to return to the Union. When he tells Margaret that he plans to join the battle soon to stop Milza, she asks to join him, but Villar asks if she can fight against her birth country, D'Artagnan. Margaret reveals to him that Milza had already wiped out her entire clan, and since she is no longer part of the Mage Society, she has nothing holding her back. Back in Theo's territory, Siluka starts to notice his army growing in numbers, so she asks if he is actually beloved. However, Theo reminds her that he could only feel the people staring at him like an eyesore whenever he tried to speak to them. Siluka notes that while she didn't even care, Theo was clearly paying close attention to his people. During a war meeting at Castle Unicorn, Laura reports that they currently have the advantage in the battle and that Queen Edokia will soon be arriving with the Palace of the Sea. But Villar still wonders why Lady Maraine's main army hasn't joined Milza in the attack. In the morning, Queen Edokia arrives in her palace warship and starts firing massive cannonballs at Milza's fleet. At the same time, Lord Villar's army launches waves of arrows at Milza's fleet, so Milza orders his men to take small boats and head for the coast immediately. Meanwhile, Lord Selj hides in a bush with his contracted mage because he was spotted by Maraine's forces while heading to his brother. Selj's contracted mage assures him that she already sent word to the King of Kilis, Solon, to help them, although she isn't sure they'll come because they are surrounded by Maraine's forces. But just then, King Solon and his army of main characters arrive to rescue them. When word reaches Marine that Lord Selj has escaped and King Solon has arrived with his forces, Lady Marine orders her army to cut off the Kilis army's retreat and make sure that they don't escape. Marine's army surrounds the Kilis army and engages them, but King Solon and his army are unbothered and start fighting her forces. Word reaches Marine again that the Kilis army is fighting back fiercely and the battle is deadlocked, so she sends reinforcements to the battle. King Solon starts to notice the disadvantage, but instead rallies his army using the power of his crest to put up a final fight. Eventually, Maraine's army manages to defeat the Kilis army and unalives King Solon, but with great losses. At the Alliance war camp, Abisudo informs Maraine that Milza's D'Artagnan forces have joined the Alliance forces and that he's received word that Lady Ururica's Nordic fleet will soon reach Castle Unicorn, signaling the start of the true battle. At Castle Unicorn, Colleen spots the Nordic fleet of dwarven warriors led by Lady Ururica approaching from the southern seas. When Lord Villar and his mages gather to discuss this, Laura wonders how the northern Nordic fleet sailed around the continent. But Villars tells her that the army must have marched to the south before building ships to sail towards the castle. When Margaret asks what they will do, Lord Villar says that his defeat has finally arrived. Villar tells his mages that his navy has taken too much damage, and that Queen Edokia's Palace of the Sea won't last long against the fleet. He reveals that Lady Marine's forces will definitely launch coordinated attacks with the Nordic fleet from land and sea, and then the castle will surely fall. He tells them that he will take command during the battle, and that he wishes the lords under him would surrender after the battle, but knows that they won't. He tells Laura to stay and inform the lords of Altyrk about his decision, and tells Helga to treat the wounded from both sides during the war. Finally, he thanks his mages for their service so far and leaves a message for Silica and Theo. At the Palace of the Sea, Queen Edokia's attendant informs her about the approaching Nordic fleet and that Viller has prepared for defeat. Edokia responds that she had a feeling it would come to this, since the verdict at the Union Congress. He tells Queen Edokia to escape the ship, so she asks if her harem will escape with her. When he tells her they'll all stay and fight, she refuses to escape, saying she can't live without them, so he knocks her out and sends her away. At Castle Unicorn, as Viller prepares for battle with Margaret by his side, he tells her he only wants her to be happy, and she replies that she is, so he finally reciprocates Margaret's feelings for him and kisses her, saying that since he's going to die, he should allow himself to love. With night approaching and Colleen unable to use the mirror weapon, the Nordic fleet begins to approach the Palace of the Sea. As Queen Edokia's men fight back, they are overpowered by the Nordic warriors. Seeing that the Nordic fleet has surrounded the palace, one of Edokia's attendants detonates a giant explosion that destroys the Palace of the Sea and several Nordic ships in the blast radius. Meanwhile, the lords of Altyrk gather and discuss the alliance's actions. Lord Clute says that they squandered the chance Lord Viller gave them to attack, and that he is now the first to be attacked, but Marcus Dawson tells him that Lord Viller brought it upon himself, and that when the alliance takes Viller's crest, they'll be open to negotiations. This angers Lord Clute, who accuses Marcus Dawson of being in a pact with the Alliance. Lord Alexis proposes that the Union surrender and recognize Lady Marine as Emperor to save Lord Viller, but they warn him that the Alliance is hell-bent on destroying the Union. When Marcus Dawson tells them to consider Viller's death, Lord Clute decides to launch an attack on Moraine's army, hoping that they may retreat. At Castle Unicorn, as the Nordic fleet attacks from the sea, Moraine's army, joined by Mills's forces, continues to advance and is about to break through the castle gates. Viller and Margaret stand ready to face the army in their last fight, so Margaret uses her ultimate spell, covering herself completely in flame and burning through the enemy lines, while Viller follows after, cutting down the soldiers in his path. Meanwhile, Lady Arurica breaches the castle from the south and unalives Kalim Masala, since she is still Viller's contracted mage. As the battle rages on, Margaret starts to run out of energy, but as Viller rushes to her side, she pushes him to safety and uses her remaining strength to self-destruct, taking several soldiers with her and then disintegrating into ashes. Shattered by losing his love, Viller charges into the army without caring about his own safety, instantly unaliving any soldier that comes near him, and Marine orders her knights to fire their crossbows at him. However, he blocks everything using his crest. Seeing this, Marine orders her army to stop so she can speak with her cousin one last time. Viller welcomes her and hugs her, offering his crest to her. Viller tells her to follow the path she has chosen for herself and also wishes that one day she'll be able to marry Alexis so she can find true happiness. When Viller dies and Lady Marine takes his crest, his soldiers are enraged and launch a final, desperate attack against the Alliance. By morning, Marine has completely taken over Castle Unicorn, and then she walks into Lord Viller's throne room. Laura confronts Lady Marine and tells her that even if she's conquered the castle, Altyrk hasn't been defeated, as the lords will resist her. Then she poisons herself and dies. Helga then asks Marine to allow her to keep treating the injured from both sides, as Lord Viller asked, and she agrees. Marine then hands Lord Viller's crest and territory over to Milza and asks him to conquer Altyrk for her. As the battle comes to an end, news of Viller's death spreads to his allies, and Theo's heart breaks upon hearing the message Viller left for him. After taking over as the ruler of Altyrk, Milza continues his conquest of the Altyrk domains, but the lords fight fiercely against him, maintaining their allegiance to Viller even after his death, which Milza finds ridiculous, asking what Lord Viller hopes to achieve when he is already dead. After Lord Viller's death, all of his remaining allies gather and form a separate faction called the Altyrk Treaty, whose goal is to carry on his legacy and prevent the Alliance from taking over the continent. As they look for a leader of the treaty, they turn to Viller's brother, Lord Selge, but he admits that Lord David is more capable. When they agree and turn to Lassic, he replies that he still serves under Theo and recommends Theo as their leader instead, but the allies start to argue about his decision. Theo steps forward and appreciates Lassic's loyalty, telling him to accept the position since most of the members want him. Then Theo announces that he intends to prove his worth as a leader in the upcoming war, so the nobles agree to let David be their leader until Theo can prove he's more capable. At Castle Unicorn, one of Moraine's mages arrives with a message, ordering Milza to invade the kingdom of Regalia, ruled by Lord Selge, and Milza notes that if they recover the territories Villar had conquered, they can force the Alturk lords to surrender. The mage warns Milza to be careful of the abilities of his enemies because of the Alturk treaty, but Milza doesn't like being told to act cautiously, so he threatens to cut open the mage if he annoys him. At the battle for Regalia, Milza starts destroying his enemies as usual, so Lord Selge orders his men to fall back. Then he rushes in to lure Milza into an ambush where Davidus waits with his own forces. When David and Milza spot each other, they charge ahead of their armies and clash, exchanging powerful blows, and soon their troops clash in a full-scale battle. But David and Milza manage to injure each other. Feeling that the odds are against him, Milza decides to retreat from the battlefield, feeling that he has done enough. At the same time, Moraine joins the Boltava army and arrives in Theo's territory. And when she hears that he has about 3,000 men in his army, she wonders if she made the right decision by rejecting his request to join the alliance. Abisudo reminds her that Theo is part of the Alturk treaty, making him the enemy, so she decides that she wants to speak with Theo before the battle begins. As Theo and Siluca receive the message, they start wondering what Moraine could want to discuss, knowing they are bound for war. Then Siluca mentions that maybe Moraine has some personal interest in Theo. Theo then agrees to meet with Moraine since he also has something he wants to say to her, and because Siluca also wants to see her father one last time. When Siluca visits Moraine's tent, she permits Abisudo to hug Siluca before they begin to talk. Then Moraine greets Theo, remarking that he looks young in truth to the rumors she had heard. Theo replies that she seems gentle, unlike the rumors he had heard about her, and then he tells her that he once met Lord Alexis, who still loves her deeply. Theo tries to convince her to think things through again. However, Moraine explains that Villar also tried to change her mind before he died, and she says she and Alexis were both too naive, and that the only way to end the Age of Chaos is by unifying the continent through military force. Theo warns her that many people will die, but Moraine declares that she's prepared for the bloodshed her conquest will cause. So Theo declares that he will continue to strive for his ideals through Siluca's help. When Moraine recalls hearing about him giving up his status for Siluca, Theo says that he simply chose what was more important. So Moraine also tells him that she also chose what was more important, but it was the alliance, not Lord Alexis. As Theo heads back to his castle, Theo says he's sure that Moraine still loves Alexis, and that he wants to bring the two of them back together. Siluca replies that such a thing would take a miracle, so Theo asks Siluca to create a miracle for him, and suddenly kisses Siluca in front of all their soldiers, giving them a preview of their upcoming OnlyFans channel. Later on, Siluca realizes that he kissed her in front of everyone to provoke Moraine and remind her of what is truly important. But Moraine returns to her tent angry, because she knows that love will defend neither Theo's castle nor her people. Suddenly, Theo receives reports that Lord Clute has defeated the Alliance forces in the north, forcing Lady Moraine to retreat and defend her castle. Siluca then tells Theo to seize the opportunity and head back to his homeland Sistina, to regain control and strengthen his position with the Alturk Treaty. As he prepares for the journey, David's mage warns them that they can't take Sistina without a large army. Siluca then insists that if they can do it without help, then the Alturk Treaty will have to recognize Theo as their leader. Hearing this, Lord David sends messengers to the lords and wishes Theo good luck, promising to hold down the fort till he returns. At the kingdom of Sistina, Lord Rossini is helping himself to an extravagant dinner with his sons when an attendant informs him that Theo has set out for Sistina. When he informs his sons, one of them remarks that he doesn't like someone with the name Cornero coming to the kingdom, which Lord Rossini agrees to, warning them to exercise utmost caution and eliminate Theo with all their might. Meanwhile, in one of the villages in Sistina, Rossini's men are forcefully collecting taxes, and when they see that it isn't enough, they head to their stores and also take their food, knowing that the villagers will starve to death. That's the end of today's video. If you stayed until now, comment down below green cans, leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see part 2 of this recap. Don't forget to check out the next video, it might just be your new favorite anime recap.